I remember taking one of my creative briefs to a senior team and they tore it to shreds. They said all I'd done is written a shorter version of the client brief. Well, I never made that mistake again. And in this video, I'm going to take you through what goes into a creative brief and how to write one that leads to better ideas and improves your relationship with the creatives. So what is a creative brief? The creative brief is a document that acts as a bridge between the client's problem and the creative idea. A good creative brief does two things: provides direction and inspiration. It captures the strategy, which is the approach you're going to take to solve the client's problems. It outlines the role advertising must play to achieve the client's objectives, marking the end of the strategic process and the beginning of the creative process. Usually, a creative brief follows this process through an agency. 1. It starts with a client brief, which outlines the objectives, the problem or opportunity, and practical things like budget and timings. 2. The planner conducts additional research to inform the strategy, like consumer groups or competitive analysis. This helps uncover an insight or a new way to solve the problem. 3. A strategic response back to the client shows how you'll solve the problem and ensures they're aligned to the approach before you brief a creative team. 4. The planner develops a creative brief, a summary of the agreed strategy. And then the last part, a creative briefing, where the creative team are taken through the brief and the creative concepting phase begins. So what goes into a creative brief? Every agency has their own template, but all good briefs usually have the following: the background on the problem or opportunity, giving context like a new product launch or a competitor who's stealing market share. The objectives on how the client will measure the success of the campaign, such as lifts in consideration or visits to the website. The target audience we're speaking to and what we know about them. This might include what they're currently thinking, feeling, and doing, and what we want them to think, feel, or do. The strategy, how we are going to change the desired behavior. The single-minded proposition, the one sentence which captures the single most important message consumers will take away from the campaign. The brand positioning, including the brand platform, brand personality, and a link to the style guide. Practical things like the creative and production budget, media channels if already booked, when the campaign will go live, when the client presentation is. So how do you write a great creative brief? Assuming your strategy is a good one, here's my 4 tips. Write for your audience. The audience for a creative brief is the creative team, not your client. Don't use jargon and don't talk like a marketer. Include things which help the creative team solve the problem, or watch outs they should avoid, like things the client doesn't like or legal issues to stay away from. 2. Keep it brief. David Ogilvy said, "Give me the liberty of a tight brief." It's right there in the name, brief. Only include what's important. Write short briefs with long appendixes if you need. 3. Tell a story. Each box on the brief should connect to the next. Don't put in everything to show how smart you are. Instead, find a narrative that tells the story of your strategy. 4. The brief is not the same as the briefing. The brief acts as a social contract between you and the creatives and must always be written down so everyone has something to fall back on, including the client. But your job as a planner is also to get the creative team excited. If you're briefing a beer campaign, take the creative team to the pub. Play a podcast that talks about the problem in an interesting way, or bring in someone from the target audience. Creatives get dozens of briefs a year. Make sure your briefing's the most interesting. For examples of great creative briefs, a copy of my creative brief template, or lessons on writing the Get Who To Buy summary, check out the Strategy Finishing School. Thanks to Zach Martin for helping to create this video as well.